Okay, we're live.
All right.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rona, and I've got Langley SHAZOR with me. How are you
Hey,
doing,
guys.
Langley?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've known your mother for years.
Oh, that's pretty great. She's definitely well known, that's for sure.
She and I met when we served together on the board of directors for the Children's Advocacy Center
Okay.
there in Bristol years ago, of course. But I really, I've known her for years, and I'm very happy I stumbled across you you were in Appalachian Americans, I believe,
Yes.
one of your broadcasts. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then I saw Langley Casual Words Shazer, sorry, darling. And I thought, oh, that's got to be Gail's son because Casual Word and her writings.
Yeah,
I
she's
love,
phenomenal.
yeah, I love her writing. So I'll let you talk.
Oh gosh. Well, again, thank you for having me. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the opportunity. You know, it's the casual word is kind of its own entity. It started out as a talk show that I have on YouTube, and then it kind of morphed into the creative writing portion and the podcast, and so all these things started to come out around it, and it was just such a unique experience. I've been very fortunate, very blessed to have the opportunity that I've had in terms of writing, in terms of reaching our youth, in terms of being able to go to universities and speak and talk about effective communication, creative writing. I've had several adult classes, and it's just been a great journey.
That's great, honey. But you're from Bristol,
Yes.
Virginia. I'm Bristol, Tennessee. So you're here, home folks.
Yes.
And I put up a brief image there of your
Hmm.
podcast. That's where
Yeah.
y'all can catch him. It's worth the listen.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
It's on all platforms as well. It's not just on Anchor. Anchor is the service that I use, but
mm,
they distribute to Google, Spotify, Apple. So we're on every platform that anyone would use to listen to podcasts.
okay, and let me show your books, and then we'll get down to you just talk about yourself and how you started on this journey.
Okay.
Let's, there, what the heart wants. What's that one about?
So that was kind of an ode to a person that was very special to me. So it was written to her. It was just a collection of love poems. Some of them were written as our relationship changed, and some were written previously. And what was unique about that book is it was the first time I got to display my poetry in a way that I really liked, but it was more familiar. So what I've done is when I use the typewriters, that's how I write all my poetry. And I started to take pictures of the poem inside the machine before I took it out and filed it away. And so what we started to do was kind of bridge the gap between literary art and visual art. So you get to read the poem, see the poem, but also
Mm,
see the aesthetics of having it in a machine in artistic form. And this book was the first time I actually put an entire collection of those types of images together.
great. I love that you use the old timey typewriters.
They are fantastic. Oh,
Now,
so this is my newest book, The 60 Days of Casual Word. It is a devotional. It was geared toward men. However, I think anyone can read it and glean something from it. It's just really a way to help men in particular tap into their emotional side. As a young man, and as we've all, especially in Western culture, we struggle with this idea that men can't have emotion, they can't show emotion, they can't talk about it. They got to pull themselves by their bootstraps kind of and keep on going, and that's simply not true, and it's not healthy. So this book
mhm.
helps them by chronicling some of the things that I've been through, things that I've experienced with other people, but in a positive way, to encourage them to dig into that emotion. Let's process that. Let's understand it. Let's become better men.
All right. Okay. Let's see this one.
Okay, so Rasiri is it's Norwegian for fury. That's what that word means,
Mm,
and it's exactly what that sounds like. It was one of my first publications, and it is kind of a way for me to get my emotions out, a way for me to get my emotions out after a very rough transition out of a relationship. So
oh,
I had all these emotions swirling at the time, and writing was my therapy. So I put together a collection of poems that, they weren't pointed at the individual. It's just my emotional state and working through those emotions. And I thought it was something, again, that people could benefit from, because people had these emotions but don't talk about them. So I published the book to just show that, hey, you're not the only person who feels this way when something like this happens.
That's great, honey. All right, I like this. Tips from the taps. Yeah.
Yes. So this was a pretty cool collaboration. Mom works for Inner Child Press, or works with Inner Child Press, which is a publisher, and I got to partner with them on this project. And this is a collection of quotes, things that I have maybe changed a little bit.
Oh, I hope I haven't lost you. Oh, oh, I hope I haven't lost you, Langley.
Oh, there we
Oh
are.
no.
Okay, that was weird.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
But yeah, Tips from Taps is a journal, and the idea behind that was you could read the quote and then write down just how it made you feel, what you thought about it, anything that came to your mind. And what I wanted to see happen was to have these kind of spread about the Tri-City area in public spaces, libraries, and whatnot, and so people could, you know, read a quote, write something down, leave it for the next person. And then at some
Oh,
point, I would collect them and just see what people wrote, just to see what they thought about just the quotes and how it made them feel, and just to look at on a larger scale the way people's minds um, relate to certain quotes and certain memories and certain experiences.
oh, okay. That sounds interesting. Did that work out okay?
I actually never got to do that. At
Oh.
most, we had, and we'll get to typewriters more here in a minute, but so I do what's called a type in, where I partner with breweries, coffee shops, libraries, tea houses, you name it. If you are willing to have people come in and sit down and write, I'll bring typewriters out. And one thing that we did at Elder Brew there in Bristol on 6th Street, one of the people who I partner with from the very beginning, love those guys. If you guys are in that area, check them out. It's a great little place, and they believe in like analog. They believe in conversation. So there's not really TVs or anything there. It's more for positive social interaction. So it was a great fit to kind of launch this concept of doing type-ins that are outside of just literary organizations. But we did one where we had a chain community story going, and so the idea was that we had 4 typewriters set up, and you could, everybody could be writing the same story. But what was unique about that was each typewriter ended up having a different story going. And so people would come up and kind of read all of them and see which one that they wanted to write on. And they sit down at that machine and they would continue the story. So it was a very, very cool experience to see 4 different narratives going simultaneously.
That's really cool. Very interesting. I like that. Okay.
Oh,
Let's take a
let's
walk.
go. That is a very special book, because I did a adult creative writing class when we talked about poetry, several different aspects of creative writing, and everybody was much older than I was, which was very humbling, for me, because they, as a young person, some people think, oh, what do you know about creative writing? What are you doing teaching us? We've been writing for years. But it was cool to see them to be receptive. And one of the things that we did was a 30-day poetry challenge, where each day there was a different topic, and you had to write about it. So the idea was just that we'd come back and see if everybody's writing about the same thing, how different everybody's poems were. Well, one of my students and I, kind of talked, and we decided to put our poems together in this book. So when you open it, you'll see his day one and my day one together. So you get a chance to look at the same topic and see how differently we write about it.
That's great. Let me say hi to Christy in the chat room. Thank you for watching, darling. She says she loves your name, Langley.
Oh, thank you.
Now, where are you right now?
I am in St. Thomas,
Mm,
the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands.
mm.
So it's a huge transition for me, but I think it was something that was necessary. Between the pandemic and economic crisis, and my entire business model being based around positive social interaction, which we could no longer do, I just,
Mm.
everything started to really collapse. So it was time for a change. And, mom reached out, and we talked, and we both thought it was a good idea for me to come and kind of reset and refocus. And so we're working on several projects together, not only in the practical sense of just my finances and working, but also, I'm rebranding my company, working on a new website. So a lot's happening, and I'm very, very fortunate to be here.
Now, I know you're a very spiritual young man. Why don't you talk about your Christianity? Because I loved your podcast with Reverend William Reed that's
Oh,
here
he's
at New Hope Baptist Church.
he's
Lord,
so
I love
fantastic.
him to.
Well, and what I love about the podcast, which is an extension of the Casual Word show, which is just a talk show, and really I started that because a gentleman, a good friend of mine, we were having conversations. We spoke daily on the phone, and it was always revelation. We were always keeping each other encouraged. And at this time in my life, I was struggling with organized religion.
Mm.
I was studying under a pastor, a great fellow. He's passed away now, but
Oh,
um, you know, I started to have a lot of issues with some of the process, and I started to have issue with some of the rhetoric and some of just the what appeared to me to be kind of arbitrary rules and regulations that applied to church that
mm,
didn't I couldn't find them in scripture. And so I started to really have a struggle in my spirit with what I'm being told versus what I'm reading in the Bible versus what my calling is. So I took some time away. This is actually part of my new book, which is 40 Days and Nights, A Journey Through the Wilderness. This was my first encounter into the wilderness, where I left the church, officially left that organization to try and figure out what God would have me to do. What I understood my calling, and I wanted to stop running from it, but I didn't know, except for some of the ideas that I had, what I was doing. So when Rick and I would talk, we'd have all these wonderful conversations. And I was like, man, I wish somebody else could hear this. And that's where God kind of spoke and was like, hey, you can start something without needing the approval of another person or organization or anything. And, that's where, our digital media has come in so handy, is that, I don't have to go through someone else to get the word out. And so the Casual Word started there, where I was trying to talk to people about their spirituality and about their journey. And the idea being that if you can see that your neighbor next door, the guy you see every day in the grocery store, or the lady that you see walking down the street with her dog, you see them on the show and you find out that they've had trials and tribulations and tests and they've overcome, then you can be encouraged that you can overcome as well. And so that was the whole point, was trying to get regular individuals onto the show so that people could see that everyone is going through something, but everyone can be triumphant as well. When I started the pastor series, I had been on the fence for some time about that, because I didn't want to have authority figures on the show, particularly because I knew that how I felt sometimes. And I was like, well,
mm,
as soon as I bring Reverend so and so or Pastor, whoever, people are
mm.
going to go ahead and turn off a sign out because they don't want to hear from an authority figure, right? And so for
Right.
the first 3 years of this was just having your everyday average individual on. But as we moved into the podcast portion,
And
I
what's the name of that, dear? I've had somebody ask. I don't mean to
Casual Word
interrupt.
Radio. Yeah, Casual Word Radio is the podcast. You can just search for that in any platform that you use. If you're on Spotify, Google, Apple, Anchor, that's just the ones I know off the top of my head that most
Okay.
people are using. But yes,
Okay.
and we still film the podcast sessions. So if you wanted to watch the actual interviews, you can go to YouTube and just type in the Casual Word, and it's going to be your first search result, and you can watch any of the interviews that we do on the podcast. And yeah, so when we got into the pastor series, I was interested less in their particular denomination and less in how they run their church, and more in their spiritual journey. How did you get here? What were things you had to overcome? What is it like being a leader in an organization in this day and time? How do you manage your home life, your personal life, and your church and your image, and the things that we all struggle with? And so that's what the pastor series was more about, was really getting a more intimate, personal look at the life of these individuals. And I don't have any scripts. I don't have predefined questions. We kind of just like you and I are doing. We jump in and have a conversation. The Spirit leads. So it's been very wonderful and very encouraging and very insightful to me to have not only so many different people, but we have been talking about so many different things. Like with Reverend Reed, we talked about the historical factor and racism and all these things that I didn't think about when I was bringing him on, when I asked him to come on the show. And we got there and I went back and watched it and I was like, golly, that's amazing. And then I had Leon Ward, William Leon Ward, who's the pastor at Hood. And, he's a historical scholar. And so, he gave us more insight on the history of the AME Zion Church and how that came about. And so it's always a unique experience to interview these people because they not only have years of servitude and years of the pastoral accomplishments, but they also have, years of life on me at least. Mm-hmm. And they have things that they've experienced that, I'm fascinated about. And thankfully I didn't have to go through, but things that we should not forget.
Never. I've mentioned to you before that I talked to Reverend Reed when he came to the police department when I was working there, and Lord, he's very interesting and talking about the people he knew and Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, and the things he saw, and talking about the bus explosion and all that. Lord, he lived through those things. And that's history.
It is, and it's history that we have to keep alive for the sake of understanding how to make change,
right?
And how to become different, how to not repeat those same things. Now, that's why it's so important for us to be aware of the history that's happened personally, as a community, as a nation. Not to still live there. No. And create a stigma and keep things going and churning up issue, but to understand, okay, this is where we were at a point in time, and this is where we want to be, and now how do we take the steps to get from there to this new destination?
Yeah, we all have the same heart. God created us all the same, and I don't believe in racism or any of that. I don't understand that at all. That's just something the mainstream media is trying to stir up there for a while.
Certainly. I agree. I think that, it plays to our natural proclivities as human beings, to have to want to be in charge of someone or feel superior to someone else. I mean, that's innate in our nature as, after the fall, Cain and Abel kind of started there with someone wanting to be better than the other. And then here we are now. But you're exactly right. I talk about it all the time. It's that negative. It's the negative 1% of life that we focus on, the mainstream media and all that. That's what they keep churning up, is that negative 1% of what's happening. But then you look at that 1% of what makes us unique, is our dialect, or the color of our skin, or the way our brains work in terms of our interest and our hobbies. And we focus on all those things to keep ourselves segregated, instead of looking at those things as unique opportunities to unite us with not only a commonality as human beings, but a uniqueness that allows us all to do something better for the kingdom. We talked about fivefold ministry in my call this morning, and my buddy yesterday. We talked about how everyone has a purpose. The Bible says that we all are called to be teachers and preachers of the word, which means everyone has a gift and a calling and a purpose. And we have to acknowledge that and help them find that lane and find that avenue so they can be successful in that, instead of trying to demean people, because they are different, because they think
Lord. I don't tolerate that. No. There's no room for that in my life. I never have understood that. I don't see skin color. I just see people's hearts and how they treat me or somebody else.
And that's it. I mean, the Bible says, a tree by its fruits, right? So, how a person's character is. I talked about that in one of my videos before, is letting your character be your witness, because no matter what you say, what you do is always going to speak louder. No matter what you're talking about, whether we get on here and we talk, or we're talking on social media, you're typing up some message. When people see how you act and see how you treat somebody else, that's a true testament to your fruit.
That's true, honey. So what all are you into there at the Virgin Islands?
Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
So, well, fun fact, I'm very excited, very humbled. I was recently licensed and ordained under New Life Worship Church in
Oh,
Plainsfield, New Jersey. Uh, Thank
congratulations.
you, thank you, thank you. So we're launching New Life International, which is going to be kind of like New Life Bristol and New Life St. Thomas,
All
and
right.
I'll be going back and forth. So, we have a vision of being a campus pastor. Um, what that looks like, we're unsure, and I say that because I really want to be a boots on the ground kind of ministry. I
Mm,
want to be outside of a building, so I'm
yeah.
trying my hardest to not have to worry about nor think about a building and a
Mm-mm.
and think about a location. What I want to do is be thinking about the service and be thinking about how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. What are we here to do? We are here to serve as Christ first served us. So we need to be out in our communities. We need to be out doing and helping and giving back through service, through help, and not just going and having a Bible study, and not just going and but everything. I talk about being practical. You don't have to talk about God to show the love of Christ. And I know some people are going to kind of gasp at that, but some people, what I found when you go into impoverished neighborhoods, when you go to these impoverished countries and developing worlds, is that they are in need of help. They are in need of a service. They are in need of someone to show that they care about their well-being. And what I have found is that when you go in just to talk about Christ and not address their needs, they're not worried about that. And
Mm.
that's the reality. They're not worried about God. They're not worried about trying to have a relationship with Christ. They're worried about how they're going to eat. They're worried about how they're going to have shoes to go, to work or to go to school, or the kids going to have the right clothes. And so I've always felt that we need to be a group of people and a family, of people who just go out and do good. And then when
Right.
people see you doing good, they'll wonder, why do you keep doing good? Well, when their interest is piqued, that's when you can talk about, well, you know, God talks to me about and talks to us about giving back and serving. So we just wanted to do that. Oh, well, I've heard about that, God. Tell me more about it. And then you can start having that conversation, because people have to be interested in that first. And,
That's
and I think that
wonderful.
we've been doing it. And I say this, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but I feel like a lot of times we've been doing ministry backwards, in a way that we put God first, which we should, but
Right.
we don't put our service first in our communities.
I
You know,
understand
we,
what you
want,
mean.
we want people to come to our church instead of going out and helping with whatever's going on in that community.
Yeah.
And we want to, as churches, we want to keep ourselves segregated, whether
Mm.
it be by denomination or location or socioeconomic
Mm-hmm.
status, as opposed to working together to service a greater demographic of people. So the onus is on us to show that love first to ourselves, first to one another, no matter what denomination you are, and then show it to our communities.
Right. I had a not to interrupt you, darling, but how much time do you have? Are you
I'm good. Yeah.
you good? Great. I don't go to the four walled churches anymore, honey. I had terrible experiences after my
Mhm.
divorce. Talking about segregation, I went to one where they wanted the divorced people to sit in one part of the church,
Oh my
and
God.
the Bible. I know, and the Bible school. The what is it? The before church, the Bible study class or whatever.
Oh.
Anyway, they Lord, there was one woman in there just bullied me when I was on crutches and stuff. It was unreal. So I thought,
Mhm.
and that was it. That was the last time I tried it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't believe in that. I believe in you just having your own relationship with Christ, and
Yeah, and
I
there's
totally
value in
understand.
fellowshipping, and we know that there's value in fellowshipping, but I think
Exactly.
we've had this antiquated philosophy of how we should gather, and I think that's
Hmm.
where we need to start making the change, where we starting to start being more progressive and open minded. Is even from a practical standpoint, we can kind of segue into that. It's expensive to keep a building up. It's expensive to keep it maintenance. It's expensive to keep it heated and cool. All these different things come at a price. And what we're seeing obviously now with between the pandemic and economic crisis and people being afraid, people aren't going into that building. So you're looking at churches shutting down simply because they can't pay the bills. And I believe, and I last time I was in Bristol, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I was really surprised to see the number of empty buildings, the number of empty churches.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's because we have for so long worked under the ideology that you've got to come to this build, come to this space, come to here, in order to engage with Christ. And we've been utilizing that as the foundation for your relationship, as opposed to the foundation being Christ itself, being Christ himself. And we need to be focused more on that personal relationship so that we can have a communal relationship that doesn't require a building for us to be able to fellowship together.
That's very refreshing. I agree. Absolutely.
I think that the pandemic is a blessing and a curse, and I know that a lot of terrible things have happened. A lot of people have passed away, and my
Yeah.
condolences to all of those. And it's a terrible thing. But on the other side of that, I'm a firm believer that the pandemic has forced the church to rethink all of these things that we were talking about. Now you've got
Yes.
to be outside because you can't gather. Now you've got
Right.
to go to your community because you can't have everybody in the building. Now,
Mm.
I mean, and you think about those things, and I feel adamantly that that's part of God's plan was to get us to stop looking at those four walls and start looking at the body of Christ, which is the people. And
Hmm.
we've been looking at the body as it being encapsulated in this room, whereas the body is encapsulated in the relationship with Christ.
Right. Right here in your
That's it.
heart and soul. Did you, off topic just a little bit, but did you hear about that preacher in Canada that got arrested and dragged out of his church, out of his home, I think?
No, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, they're like Nazis right up there right now.
Really?
Yeah, they had drug him out, and the poor man had come from like Poland or somewhere where he'd been oppressed, and because he was trying to keep his church open, they sent all these terrible people that were supposed to be police officers, and they drug him out, showed it on
Interesting.
his knees, and his brother threw him in awful solitary confinement, tortured him. It was awful. I think 36 hours, and I'd been praying for the man. And they set his house on fire and padlocked
Wow.
his church, honey. Now that's in Canada. That's just
That,
right across the
yeah,
border.
that's it.
We got to pray hard.
We have to because I think that something else that we have to be aware of is in this time and the a lot of people are talking about the last days, and I'm not an end of the world type of scholar. I understand that, but I don't
Right,
study that. I understand that the time could be any time, and the
right,
Bible says no man knows the day nor the hour. It could be tomorrow, it could be 200 years from now,
right.
and so we have to be aware, but also be living in the present. And with that, I think people need to be aware of the times that we're living in. If you look at social media, I don't know how many people that are watching follow along with some of the algorithms in terms of what they're seeing in their feeds, but I have started to notice that a lot of my faith-based information is missing.
Yeah,
And I've been watching other pastors who are saying their videos aren't being populated as frequently as they were, and they're not seeing as many viewers as they were. And so, I think we're living in a time, and I think the situation in Canada is not only tragic, but a more physical extension of that, where you're seeing the oppression of the word of the
hmm,
gospel
yes,
because it is a foundational part of how people can come together and be united. uh,
right,
and you look at throughout history, people are first separated, divided, and then conquered.
right.
So when you look at things that are happening globally, you see this
Hmm.
across. Not only are they stripping us away from our belief system, which we know psychologically is paramount to how human beings interact with each other and how they maintain that hope and going in the future, but then they start separating us from each other to
Right.
make it easier for us to go along with whatever, large scale plan. I'm not going to get any kind of conspiracy theories, guys, but we see that
Well,
things happening
I
that are
talk
keeping
about it.
us away.
I don't consider it conspiracy theory, honey. It's history repeating itself, and we have to stop it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and and people will argue about who's behind what, and that's not really the issue. The issue is that we have to continue to be together. We have to continue to work together. We have to continue to show a united front, and that front doesn't have to be based on any one denomination or belief system. That front can be simply because we are human beings and we've got to come together one with another in order to fight the enemy who comes to kill, steal, and destroy. That's his job.
I'm sorry. Let me get this. I know, honey. But to me, yeah, I've been praying for America, and I advocate praying for each other, sending out your light and love to each other,
Hmm.
because I think that's a very powerful force that we have inside of us. Some people may not realize they have it, but we can send out our light and love to each other.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that 6 feet apart separation and covering our face and all that, that was all to me. And it's not conspiracy theorists. I've watched too many things about it, and history repeating itself like Nazi Germany.
Hmm.
And we've just got to be aware of that and stop it. I mean, we have to not be violent, of course, but we have to be aware of what's going on as
Certainly.
patriots here, and know that we are Christians. We are children of God, and we
That's
are
right.
not
And
going
that's
to
it.
be. We're
And
not going to be muzzled.
we have victory,
Yes,
and you see it. All they can do is try and distract and dissuade.
yes,
The thing is that we have victory. The word's going to come out. We're going to continue to profess the word. And the only thing the devil can really do is slow down the blessing.
right,
There's no way to thwart it completely, but he can obviously slow it down, slow you down, make you distracted, change. And that's what he does, right? He comes into your life and he's going to have something going on in your marriage, or something's going on with your family, or something's going to happen with your finances, something's going to happen with your job, and you're going to have a harder time staying focused on Christ because everything is falling apart around you. And that's what he is designed to do. That's his entire purpose and his existence. But that's why we have faith. And that's what our faith does, is to let us know that even though I don't understand what's happening around me and I see what's happening around me in the physical, I know that God still has me in the palm of his hand. He's still
right.
going to save me, and he's still going to open doors and opportunities. I think a lot of people have this misconception that when you become saved and you start to follow Christ, it's all rainbows, butterflies, and unicorns.
Mm,
And what happens is you become a target because now you've walked away from the enemy and walked away from the world. And now you're trying to follow Christ and follow in your path. So it becomes harder. It becomes more difficult. It becomes more challenging. And we have to be talking about that practically as we have this discipleship. It's not going to get easier, but what's going to happen is you're going to get stronger, right?
yes.
Paul talked about your
Amen.
faith, and when your faith is gone, pushed through, and when your faith is tested, your faith grows. So it's not that your
Exactly.
problems get any easier; it just gets easier to handle them. And
That's
we have to realize that when we exercise our faith, and when we can exercise our faith together, in concert, then we
hmm
have real power. What does he say? When two or three are gathered in my name, I am there in the midst. So imagine when there's 30, imagine when there's 300, imagine when there's 3 million. Then you start talking about real change. And we just have to start with, but it starts with the individual and their family, then their community, then their city, and it broadens out. But we have to start somewhere. It has to start here, like you said, in your heart.
hmm And I'm just feeling it right now. I'm just feeling the spirit with us talking together, like this. And you're in the Virgin Islands, but I don't think the distance matters.
No,
Um,
no, not at all.
I'm getting teared up here because I'm getting so emotionally happy. Um, we are of like mind and heart and spirit, I believe, because I believe that. And we have to help each other and be positive and pray hard for our country, for our
Absolutely.
world, not just for America, but for the whole world.
Absolutely, because the atrocities are happening even as you and I are sitting here talking. I
Yes.
think we get so caught up in what's happening at home, and we
Yeah.
get, and not that what's happening at home isn't important, guys. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not saying to neglect anything that's happening in your personal life and neglect what's happening at home. But what I'm saying is realize that there are people who are going through things so much worse than
Mm,
what we're dealing with right now. And even though what we're dealing with is bad, there's still, as we were talking, there's genocides,
yes.
mass killings,
Yes.
there's human trafficking happening right now. We're talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
global disasters happening right now. So just remember that we need to be praying for everyone, because there are things happening that in some cases are just beyond our imagination in terms of
Absolutely.
like how terrible these atrocities are. And we need to be, because distance doesn't matter and prayer works, we can continue to be praying and uplifting for other people in other countries, knowing that God can come and save them just as he saved us.
He can. He can do anything. You know, that's always, I've always known that. He can do anything. There's nothing God can't do. Did you hear about the Congo and that a volcano erupting just the other day?
Yes.
Lord, that's something I have, of course, can't imagine. Uh, just wiped out hundreds of homes, and I don't know the death toll. My heart just goes out to them. And of course, we know I haven't, I talk about the child trafficking. Now, that's a huge thing,
Right.
and it's not conspiracy theory. They're
That's
right.
happening. That's happening.
Yeah.
I was part of the Red Sand Project. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
No, I haven't
we
heard that one.
so the YWCA there in Bristol did was partnered with the Red Sand Project, and what that was simply coming together in solidarity to bring awareness to human trafficking. And we went out and we spread sand in the cracks of the sidewalk there in front of the
Hmm.
YWCA downtown. It was super unique, and I was very
Wow.
thankful to be a part of it. But the statistics were astonishing, and I don't want to misquote them, so I'm not going to try and tell you guys because I don't remember. But the frequency with which people are being abducted, children are being abducted, is
Yes.
completely unbelievable. And it's happening here. I mean, we had a situation that was in Kingsport, that they broke up some big trafficking ring. I mean, it's not a situation where don't think it's not happening here, so you don't have to be aware, and don't think it's not happening in your community, so you don't have to pay attention to what's going on. I think a lot of us bury our heads in the sand because it doesn't hit home, and that's a problem with humanity too. Is that if it doesn't affect me personally, then I don't care. Well, you need to start caring because you don't know who's doing what, and you don't know how close that is. I think it's like 80% of molestation cases are from family members and people that
Hmm.
these children know. So just
Oh, yeah.
not to be morbid, guys, but just bring awareness, realizing that you might be blessed that nothing's touching your home, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be praying for someone else because you don't know how close it is.
That's true. When I was little, I was almost kidnapped, and that was way back in the 60s, honey. And me and Mama were in maybe Hills, I don't know, Hills department store. And I was little, but I remember it. And this woman grabbed my hand and just started dragging me away. And Mama was just momentarily looking at something on the store shelf. And of course, I started screaming like a banshee for my mommy. And she ran and grabbed me back, and that woman said, "Oh, I thought she was my daughter," which of course wasn't true. But back then we didn't have internet. We had two channels on the TV. Child kidnapping was not even really known much about
Mhm.
back then. They didn't even have the milk cartons with the missing children yet at that time. They had
Right.
milk bottles, caveman times. But thank God for my mama. She's from West Virginia, and she's a strong-willed woman. 86, she's still strong-willed, but she knows now that it was a kidnapping attempt. And if she'd have realized it back then, that woman wouldn't have been able to walk out the store
Certainly.
because she'd have been all over her. But it happens, and it
It
could
does.
be your neighbor's child. And I know that because I watch different digital soldiers, and a lot of people call them conspiracy theorists, but I don't. I do not watch the mainstream media, and I know that they are rescuing children right now
Well, they
all
are.
over
They
the
are all
world.
over the world, from all over the world. I mean, these
Yes.
kids are getting picked up here and ending up in, the Philippines. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. And we just need to be aware, guys. It's this thing that our due diligence is to come together to protect our future generations, to protect ourselves, not violently, but
Mm-mm.
to be aware, to understand that these things are happening. To have the wherewithal to be aware of your surroundings, and be cognitive and understand what's going on, and working together as a unit. We've gotten away from the neighborhood. My mom made a great quote the other day. She said, "We don't do porches anymore," and what she was
Yeah.
meaning. We don't sit out and we don't talk. We don't come together and just enjoy each other's company for the sake of our company. You go out to dinner, you look around, everybody's on their phone.
Oh,
We
I
don't even
know. I
have
hate it.
conversation anymore. So, and I'm
Mm.
not saying that the digital age isn't without its merit. Technology, we have more technology at our fingertips in microseconds than we ever had in the history of the world. So I'm not going to say that technology is bad. It was just how we've been using it and what we've
Right.
been using it for, and which goes back down to the individual, what's in your heart.
That's true. I agree, honey. And texting and driving these youngins,
Yes. Yeah.
Lord have
It's,
mercy. They don't know the danger they're in. If they'd seen some of the stuff I saw at the police department, of course, I was a secretary. I just saw the pictures and kept up with the files. But the officers have to see that in
yes.
person. And Lord, and the first responders, my heart goes out to the life saving crew people, firemen, all of them. They have to see that
Yeah. And, and,
atrocity.
and, and sometimes you see it a lot more frequently than you should have to.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Unfortunately,
true.
I'm joining St. Thomas Rescue, so I'll be a first responder here,
Oh,
working on
really?
search and rescue, diving, marine rescue. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, that's one thing you have to prepare yourself for mentally is what you're going to have to encounter when you go out on a call.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't shaking my head no to you, Mama. Just asked me a question.
Oh,
Um, well, good for you, darling. But yeah, you'll see stuff that you
wish you
never,
had.
never could imagine, and you won't be able to get out of your head, honey. But you just got to pray. And I heard you talking on one of your, not to switch subjects, but talking about mental health. I had a nervous breakdown, 6 years ago. That's why I had to retire from the police department.
Mhm.
And I had to have therapy. And it
It's
was a must.
it's
And I denied myself that for
yeah.
a few years. My nurse practitioner kept saying, Ronnie, you need therapy for your stress. And I thought, again, I don't want anybody to know there's a stigma around that. And,
There is, and
and
you
that's
just have to
stupid.
you have to find the courage, and it does take courage. It does take
Mm-hmm.
courage because it just like I was saying in that podcast, or that live feed. That was the single most important thing that I've ever could have done for myself at that time, um, and I didn't realize how bad I was affected until I had the opportunity to sit down with a professional and talk about it.
Right.
And so I encourage everyone to seek counsel from a licensed therapist at some point. If you feel like you're overwhelmed, you feel like you can't shake a feeling or an emotional state, you should go talk to somebody because. And I tell you what changed was that God was working on me with this. It was after my divorce, and that was horrible. We're not going to get into that, but it really messed with me in a way that I didn't expect. And God was working with me, and I'll never forget. I was sitting at work, and I was still teaching at the time at the middle school, and I was
Mm-hmm.
sitting in my classroom. Everybody was taking a test. It was quiet, and all of a sudden, I had the epiphany that if God made doctors, right, and you go to school to be a doctor and a proficient surgeon, a proficient healthcare provider, these people went to school too. And these people are educated, these people have experience as well. And so it was in that moment of clarity that I realized, well, that's why there are professionals for this field. And so for me personally, it was that realization that gave me comfort, realizing that I need to go see a professional because this is what they do. Just like you don't go to Walmart if you got a broken arm, you go see the doctor, right? So, and
Me,
we
hope
say that all
not.
the time, but it's the same thing, so when you have a situation, and the thing is that because it's not tangible, right, because it's not something that you can always see on the outside of someone's countenance, that we brush it off as though it's not necessary to address, and that's simply not true because it says that out of the heart the mouth speaketh, but first it becomes a thought. So whatever's going on in your mind. That's why I always say at the end of my shows, let's change the way that we think, so we change the way that we live, because it all starts here. And this is where the battlefield takes place. This is where the enemy attacks you first, is in your mind. Noel Jones wrote a book called The Battlefield of the Mind, where he talks about that. That's always the first place that the enemy is going to attack, because if he can change how you're thinking and how you're perceiving something, if he can change how you feel about something based on the way you think about it, then he can change how you act, how you conduct yourself with other people, how your belief system even affects you. You start questioning your faith, you start having doubt, all these things start to happen, and you spiral out of control. So I say all that to say, guys, please, if you are in a position where you feel like there's no way out, if you feel like there's something going on that you don't understand within yourself, go seek a professional. Because I can tell you from experience that I was in a point where I didn't care if someone wanted to pray for me. I don't want to hear that. I need real help. I need to understand what's wrong with me, because at the time there was something that I didn't understand that was affecting me in every facet of my life. So I'm not saying that prayer doesn't help, but
Of course.
I can tell you from personal experience that, people are like, oh, I'll keep praying for you. I don't care about that. I don't want you to pray for me, and I wasn't being rude, but it was like, that's all well and good, but I need help. I need someone to really help me. And so I know that feeling of desperation, guys. And so I'm just saying that, if you feel that way, please go seek professional help. If you're convicted to do so, some people can do it without that. But I would say that, I've seen some strong people in faith lose their lives from mental anguish. We'll say that the suicide rate for pastors is astronomical.
Really?
Yeah, yes, and there's a lot behind that, spiritually behind that, but from a practical sense, it's because of all the stress, it's because of all the pressure, it's because of what's happening at home, what's happening at church, and all these things that they're this burden they have to shoulder that eventually takes their mind. And so, the guys, don't think that anyone is outside of the realm of being affected by mental wellness or lack thereof. So, just make sure that you're doing everything that you can for yourself to be the best version of you, so you can continue to do whatever it is that God's called you to do, guys.
That's great, honey. And it's the truth. And I can understand. See, I was in an abusive marriage and 12 and a half years. And I was working at the police department during part of that and reading abuse reports. And I'd read those reports and I'd think, honey, why are you still in that situation?
Right.
And then it finally hit me. Well, you big dummy, why are you still in it? And so it took a plan and a real nice lady dispatcher there helped me, and he met me in the middle of a night, snowy night, and late at night, not middle of it, and got me away, and I escaped and hid, um, and you, and when you're talking, and then at all the stuff at the police department, I absorb other people's energy,
Sure.
like empathy. I don't know what
Yeah,
that makes me.
it's an empath.
Well, I absorb it big time, and I was absorbing all kinds of energy there at the police department. And if that's why I collapsed, because of all my past, things. And when you have a collapse like that, and my doctor absolutely sent me to the right therapist because she specialized in trauma. And she explained to me that when you have a collapse like that, you relive every trauma you've ever experienced.
Absolutely.
And that was true. I couldn't cut off this up here. I have PTSD from it, and that is being controlled right now. But it flares up every now and then. And but what my point is, I lost everything after that, because I couldn't live on the retirement. And thankfully, my mom was here, and I lost my home, and I lost all my abilities, with that nervous breakdown. And so, mom, of course, moved me in with her, and I know if God and my mom hadn't have intervened, I wouldn't be here today, because I would be homeless, and I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I don't mind tell people, right before I came here, I was living out of my car. So, I'd lost my house in October and had been just scrambling and just barely keep my head above water until I moved here in April. So that's, for a little over 6 months, I was wherever I could lay my head. So, again, it's like you, if it hadn't been for God, hadn't been for my mom, and it hadn't been for my mom being so connected
Mm-hmm.
spiritually to feel that and to know that that was happening, because of course it was a pride thing. It was I can do this, I can fix it, I can get back on my feet. I wasn't being irresponsible or irreverent. I just, things happen outside of my control, and so I was
I
like, no, I
understand.
can get it, but I couldn't. And so,
No.
mom, she felt that and she knew it and she understood it. And
Yeah.
and then the secondary part of that was having the courage to follow the conviction. That's one of those moments where the way everything lined up and it happened so fast, I was like, this can only be God. The fact that it was even an option let me know it was only God, because we had never talked about me coming down here before. So that alone let me know. And then the way everything, he lined it all up, and it just boom, 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 boom. And I was like, okay, I've got to get on this plane. And a lot of
Right.
people said about it. A lot of people didn't like it. I'm still dealing with some stuff from back in Bristol that I've got to iron out, but it is what it is.
You
And
got to take care of you and follow
absolutely.
God's plan, honey.
And I know that it was part of God's plan, and because of the opportunities that have presented themselves in the 2 months that I've been here, and the number of opportunities, I know that this was the right move, and I know that all the other stuff, God's going to take care of that, and He's going to work all
Yes.
of it out. We just have to continue to be obedient, guys. And I do want to say that to everybody. We're blessed by our obedience, and sometimes being obedient is going to be uncomfortable, but
Mm-hmm.
change can only happen in a place of discomfort. So I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to tell everybody that if you're in an uncomfortable place, don't be discouraged, because this is where change is happening. This is where change and transition happen. This is where opportunities present themselves, in that place of discomfort. So I just want to encourage anybody who's going through something right now. If it's uncomfortable and you don't like it, good, because that means whatever's getting ready to come is going to be better than what you had.
That's true. I agree with you. Um, I'm so glad I come across your uh, commentary that day, your podcast, because I'm really blessed. I've really been blessed listening to you today.
Thank you.
And
It's been a
I,
blessing. Thank you for having me.
oh, honey, I'd love to have you back.
We
Um,
can definitely work that out, guys, and it'll be
yeah,
terrific.
because this is great. I think this is good energy. We can combine our energies, send out good light and love to the world, you know,
Absolutely.
and you send it to the next person you meet. But also on this is the only way, because I'm not physically able to get out in the community and do stuff. I used to volunteer, and but I can't right now. But I hope to after I have my weight loss surgery and it heals a lot of my health problems. But I'm not complaining. I'm
Well,
thankful I've got this
and
medium.
yes, that's it. That's it, guys. And so I applaud you for not looking at your situation as a detriment. And I want to encourage
No,
anybody else who's watching this, and people who will watch this later on, is that there's always an option. There's always an alternative. There's always something you can be doing. And so we talk about this in my call this morning. We do a call on Clubhouse. Everybody's familiar with that application. It's called Win the Morning. And we talked about the fact that not only do you not know who you're going to impact when you show up, and we talk about keep showing up and keep being there, but we also talk about the fact that, every no turns into a yes and leads to a yes, and every setback is a setup. So I want to encourage everybody right now that, if you're looking at someone else's platform, and you're wondering why yours isn't like that, maybe reevaluate what you're doing, because maybe yours doesn't look like that because it's not what you're supposed to be doing. That's not in God's plan. But the point is also that there are tons of options. So don't be discouraged if you have a goal, if you have a passion, if you have a conviction for something, and it's not happening just the way you think right this moment. Because just like this, now she can't get out into the community, but she can still get the gospel out through this platform. And this is a testament to someone who doesn't give up, and it keeps showing up. So we've been talking, it's kind of the theme that we've kind of kicked off for this month and going forward in the year. We got to keep showing up. So whatever it is
yes,
that you do and however you need to show up, everybody who's watching, people who will watch this later, you keep doing that, because that is part of your calling, part of your purpose, and surely you're going to continue to affect the world in a positive way.
yeah, I agree. Amen. Oh, you've really blessed me, darling.
Thank you
Lord,
for having me. This has been remarkable, just remarkable. So it's been fantastic. So I hope everybody else is as blessed as I've been able to have this conversation. Those of you all who are listening.
yes, and they will listen later if they're not watching it right now, honey. But I love you, and I love your mother. Lord
Thank
have
you.
mercy, and her writings and things that she does, and I just love your spirit, and I appreciate you so much, and I'd like to have you on here regularly. We can talk about that if
Okay.
you
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
time.
I'll
I
make
don't.
that time.
Bless your
We'll,
heart.
we'll 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 make sure we can do that.
You're just
Absolutely.
precious, precious. Oh, I needed this.
Thank you. Me too.
See,
Me too.
this was church for me, honey.
That's it. Where two or three are gathered. That's the point. And it doesn't have to be. We don't have to be physically present anymore. That's what technology has given us.
That's right, honey. Well, I'm going to start blubbering, so I better get off of here. But
Okay.
I
Well,
love you.
thank you. I love you, and thank you. And we'll definitely be talking offline. And everybody who's listening, real quick, you can find me on Facebook, Langley
Yes,
Casual Word
sorry.
Shazer. I'm also on Instagram at the Casual Word. You can. I'm working on a new website, so soon I'll be able to have that up, and you guys can check that out too. But again, the podcast is Casual Word Radio. You can find that on any platform that offers podcast streaming. I also have a YouTube channel, which is the Casual Word, that is on YouTube. So you guys can reach out to me directly at thecasualword@gmail.com. I always respond to all emails. I'll also respond to direct messaging through Facebook or Instagram or any of that nature, guys. So don't hesitate to reach out. Again, if you want to be a guest on my show, we're going to talk about that as well
Okay.
offline.
I'd love to.
Please reach out to me if you have a testimony, if you have something that you want to talk about, if you have something that you want to share with other people, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll make sure to get you on the show. Again, with technology, we don't have to be in the same room, but we can certainly be in the same spiritual space. So,
That's
guys,
right.
for me, thank you again, Ron. Thank you for having me. As always, guys, as people who know me say, hey, let's change the way that we think. We change the way that we live, guys. Keep doing the good things that you're doing. Keep fighting the good fight.
And where can I get your books? I forgot to
Oh
tell
yes,
them.
all the books are available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon, you can type in my name, Langley Shazer, and the books will pop right up. So,
That's
and be on the
great.
lookout for two more. I've got two more coming out this year. I've got one called 40 Days of Nights Journey to the Wilderness, and that is a autobiographical chronicle of the three most prevalent times that I've gone into the wilderness. I talked about some of that earlier today in this interview, where we talked about when I left the church, and then there's going to be a second one kind of dealing with my divorce and all things that happened after that, going into the wilderness. And then actually this time in history currently, where I'm made that transition away from Bristol. This is my third most prevalent encounter in the wilderness side. So I'll be talking a lot about that in that book. And then I've got another book coming out, and it's called Baby Daddy, Changing the Narrative. And it is a kind of a challenge and a clarion call for men to be better men, for us to be better
Mm,
fathers, for us to be better role models, for us to be better mentors, and for us to be better as human beings all around. So we'll be talking about a lot of uncomfortable information and uncomfortable things in that book. It is for men. This is something that I wrote that I felt is something we need to be talking about. We need to talk about how we treat women, how we treat our children, how we treat ourselves, the things that we've been doing that have kind of become the status quo in terms of interpersonal relationships that we need to stop. So, and I talk about myself too. I mean, I'll be talking about things that I've done, that, you know, where I've made mistakes as a father, where I've made mistakes as a husband, where I made mistakes as a boyfriend. And so this is not me on my ivory tower telling you how to live. This is me
no,
talking
Lord,
about
no.
how I've lived and how I'm trying to change and walking through that change with you guys. So be on the lookout for those books coming out later this year. And I'll have all my social media. Again, the website will be up here soon. So thank you guys for all the support. Thank you for listening today. And thank you, Ron, again for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, darling. And you all have a wonderful day. I'm sending out a big hug and lots of love and light. And y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Love you.